Welcome to the weekly worship hour with the Forest Park Seventh-day Adventist Church, a vibrant, diverse, growing, and friendly community of faith located in Everett, Washington, blending traditional and contemporary elements to create a weekly opportunity to worship our Creator God. Now, please find a quiet and comfortable place to sit and enjoy this week's episode of the weekly worship hour with the Forest Park Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Would everyone like to stand up and let's tell God that we're glad we're here in this worship house.
I will rejoice, for He has made me glad. says, Yesu ni wangu wa uzima wa milele. Means Jesus is mine forever. And anatupenda wa uzima wa milele. He loves us forevermore. The next one is in Spanish, and we have written in our class a translation for it that goes into the song, so I hope you enjoy it. Yesu ni wangu wa uzima wa milele. Yesu ni wangu wa uzima wa milele. Oh, Yesu ni wangu wa uzima wa milele. Yesu ni wangu wa uzima wa milele. Oh, 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 wa uzima. Oh, anatupenda wa uzima wa milele.
Well, good morning, everyone. If you have not yet been blessed, check your heartbeat. Oh my. I'm just going to try to get through this without messing it up because I've already received a huge Sabbath day blessing. Wow. Well, good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to be with you, a pleasure to hear the language of children share about the love of Jesus. If that, man, I've been over here just smiling. My ears are hurting. You know, just wonderful to be with you today. Just to briefly introduce myself, I was born a small child a long time ago. No, my wife Carissa and I accepted the call here to Washington Conference about a year and a half ago. My wife is the principal at Northwest Christian School in Puyallup, where she is today, with activities going on there today and Fall Festival tomorrow and all of that. And nothing brings us greater joy than to be involved in partnership, church and school and family, in discipling young people for Jesus Christ. It is forever work. It's work that's never done. But it's work that culminates in gathering at Jesus' side. by the tree of life. And there is no greater investment than our children. I think about the challenges of today and the challenges to our personal faith, our walk with Jesus. And there are times when we feel up, and there's times when we're not so up. Remember one of the songs that the kids sang up here? My God is so big. Do you remember that time on the playground we were saying, well, my dad could... Oh yeah, well, my dad. You know? My God is so big, so strong, so mighty. Finish it for me. Well, that was sort of okay. I wasn't conducting very well. Do you believe it? Is my question today. Do you believe it down to the soles of your feet that there is nothing, my God? See, we're going to get personal today. We could talk of a collective God, the God of everybody, and He is that. But today I want to focus on your God, your personal friendship with God. It may be up right now, and praise the Lord. When we're sitting in the pew, life seems a lot simpler. When we're sitting on I-5, things look a little different. Two stories today. They're both found in 2 Kings chapter 4. I would love it if you were to open your Bible or your Bible app to 2 Kings chapter 4. Two stories about women today. One is a story of a preacher's household, but the preacher has passed away. It's a story of a woman who has two sons, and they have next to nothing. In fact, they're in debt. Now, we in North America know a little bit about debt. We all live in it like it's normal. We all navigate life with some element of short-term or long-term debt. But when the debt is so great that there are people on their way to your house to take your kids away from you to be slaves, as was common in this culture, that should put a great deal of fear in your hearts. You can take my car. You can have my house, but don't mess with my kids. The creditors are already on the way. If you join me in 2 Kings chapter 4, a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha. Now, in this couple of stories, we're going to look at Elisha, a much different prophet than that of Elijah. When we think of fire coming down from heaven and Elisha's ministry was a much quieter pastoral type of ministry, a career that spanned 50 years. Elisha's presence, his companionship, talking around a table, lingering after a meal, that was more Elisha's ministry. Your servant, my husband, is dead, she says, and you know that your servant feared the Lord. And the creditors, end of verse 1, is coming to take my two sons to be his slaves. Verse 2, so Elisha said to her, what shall I do for you? Imagine that one of your relatives lives in South Carolina and is now $878 million richer. And they call you and say, what can I do for you? Think about that for a moment. Your wildest imaginations at work. Now think about this prophet, this man of God, is asking this woman, what can I do for you? My God is so big, so strong, and so mighty. There is nothing my God can't do. For you too? What can I do for you? We see that question in the next story, but we won't go there for just a second. She says, your maidservant has nothing. She was lying, by the way, but we'll get to that in a moment. Your maidservant has nothing in the house. Well, then out comes the truth. But, well, I do have, actually in the cupboard is a jar of oil. So often I think I have nothing. And yet God offers Himself and says, hey, what do you got that could be an offering to me? Well, I don't have anything. Yes, you do. I've blessed you in so many different ways. Well, as in this household, as the blessings seem to have dwindled down and the creditors were already on their way, it was just a small jar of oil that remained. To which Elisha says, well, go get it. In fact, go. Well, I've got to read it, otherwise I'll get off track. Then he said, go borrow vessels from everywhere. Have you been to everywhere? Have you been to everywhere, kids?
No.
Is that just down the street?
No.
Is that to the next neighborhood over?
No.
Everywhere is everywhere. So I have to wonder, how many vessels did they gather? We don't know, because for some reason this story doesn't count them. But they gathered vessels from seemingly everywhere. And at the instruction of the prophet, they shut the door and begin pouring from this little flask with a little bit of oil in the bottom. They begin pouring into these empty vessels. Now right there is probably one of our greatest illustrations today of us. We are empty vessels that God longs to fill with His Spirit, all the way to the brim. You wouldn't pour precious oil into a flask that has a bunch of dirt at the bottom. It would contaminate the oil. The vessel must first be empty before it can be filled. I don't know about you, but I don't like empty. I took a picture of my dashboard the other day. In my little Honda, it says range, and there's a little number. A slight recommendation, of course. You know what that is? It's the number of miles to empty. The reason I took a picture of my dashboard was the number said 0. 0. As I coasted into the gas station there at Costco, I was a little fearful because it was at the top of a hill. I'm like, am I going to make it? I had procrastinated too far long to fill that gas tank. How about our souls? So she went from him and shut the door behind her, verse 5. Her sons there as witnesses and helpers brought the vessels to her, and she poured it out. We could also say God poured it out. Verse 6, now it came to pass when the vessels, every one of them that they had gathered, when the vessels were full, then she said to her son, hey, bring me another vessel, quick. And he said to her, there are no other vessel. So the oil ceased. It stopped. Whatever capacity had been offered had been completely filled. And then she came in and told the man of God, and he said, well, then go sell the oil, pay off your debts, and you and your sons may live on the rest. Oh, what a blessing to this household. A financial blessing, if you will, that we can see the spiritual application of. We turn to the next story that, well, it doesn't describe this woman as just a certain woman. It says a notable woman. Continuing in verse 8. Now it happened one day that Elisha went to Shunem, where there was a notable woman, and she persuaded him to eat some food. So it was, as often as he passed by, he would turn in there to eat some food. Often the original language gives us a little hint beyond what's translated into the English. And the Hebrew word used for persuaded is laid hold of. If you can imagine this woman coming to the preacher man and saying, You are having dinner at our house. It's not a question. This notable woman, perhaps noted in her community as a wonderful hostess. And Elisha would not think thereafter to eat anywhere else than that home when he came to town. Verse 9, and she said to her husband, look now, I know that this is a holy man of God who comes by us from time to time. I just know it. Verse 10, please let us, now husbands, when your wife says to you, why don't we, who's she talking to? I'm thankful that there's a place in this story for the man of Shunem. It's him that went to Home Depot to get the stuff for this plan that she already has. I love this. Let us make a small upper room on the wall of our home. She's already got it decorated in her mind. Let's put a bed there for him, and a table, and a chair, and a lampstand, and make sure it has Wi-Fi. I mean, everything that you could. So it will be whenever he comes to us, he can turn in there. Elisha already seems to be a regular guest in this couple's home, but they want that experience to linger and to not be rushed, to be able to share a meal and enjoy conversation and then retire for the evening and wake up and have breakfast together again. Friends, just as this couple, we all must make room for God in our lives. I know your schedule's busy. There's not a person on the planet that's not busy. And by the way, that smartphone doesn't make us so smart. Because work and life follows us everywhere. Why not take a Sabbath from your phone once in a while? Why not truly take a Sabbath from the things you associate with busyness, hectic, hurry, rushed? There are many, many words implied by the word Sabbath. One of them is that in the middle of Sabbath is Abba, our daddy, who longs to spend a whole day with us, to lodge, tabernacle with us. Another word implied in the word Sabbath is stop. Stop. For in creation, God ended His work, and He rested, and He blessed the Sabbath day. Oh, how easily I can get sidetracked. Let us make this room for Elisha, that whenever he comes around, he can stay with us. Well, it's a terrific idea. Verse 11, now it happened one day that he came there and he turned into the upper room. Now imagine you're a guest in someone's home. You know, and maybe it's a familiar home. It's maybe you've got kids about the same age and you're always out there cheering on the sideline for the games, whatever else. And then you invite one another. We don't do that much anymore. Invite each other over to our homes. You know, we kind of... But you come over and the first thing I usually look for is, do I take my shoes off or leave them on? I look for the shoes. Oh, there's a pile of shoes. I'll kick mine off too, you know. And what I do is different from what the prophet did that day. Often, if it's the first time, someone might say, well, would you like to look around? We'll give you a little tour, you know, and you can smell the food, maybe cooking. And it's wonderful. But in this case, Elisha comes by, he sees the room. Verse 11, he sees this upper room and he goes in there and he lays down. He lays out and takes a nap. Have you ever tried that at someone else's home? Hey, where's your guest bedroom? I'll see you guys in a few hours. You know? Friends, that's how comfortable he felt in their home. Which is what God desires in your schedule. You can't just wedge Him in. He's got to be resident every day of our week. We know this. But to practice it, a similar question comes up. You know, it doesn't take Target and Costco to tell us that the holidays are around the corner. We know, really, it's okay. We know the changing of the colors is from black and orange to red and green, retail. And, well, with the holidays coming, there's that one person that's just hard to buy for. I mean, what would be the perfect gift this year? Last year the sweater was nice, but what could I get? And that's what Elisha and Gehazi begin talking about. This woman has been so kind to us. What can we do in return for her? It's a spontaneous reaction that when you have been loved on by God, you want to love on others. What can we do for her? Look, you have been so concerned for us with all this care, verse 13. What can I do for you? Same question as in the other story. The prophet, influential, righteous, powerful. He even offers some suggestions to her. Do you want me to speak on your behalf to the king? Because I've got his ear. Or to the commander of the army? And notice, friends, her response. I dwell among my own people. I had no clue what that meant when I first read it. What is she talking about? Did she understand the question? She says in end of verse 13, she answered, I dwell among my own people. Try that next time when your wife asks you to empty the dishwasher. I dwell among... What does that mean? It finally dawned on me, this is my town. This is my life. This is where I dwell. This is my life. It was a statement of contentment. Oh, man. In 2019, how is contentment so hard to find? Think about it. Contentment. And don't just associate it with that overstuffed after Thanksgiving meal kind of feeling. No. I'm talking about inner joy, resolve. This is how God wants me to be. Contentment. But I think what made this woman even more notable than her cooking was perhaps the journey that took her to contentment. It's not an easy one. If you think about your level of faith, your level of contentment, is it a few notches down from perfect? Mine is. Contentment. I'm fine. I am in need of nothing, she says. Well, that's not enough for the prophet and his servant. What then can be done for her? Verse 14. And Gehazi answers, well, actually, she has no son and her husband is old. That's not very polite, don't you think? Just in the previous story, had we not been in the home of a widow with 2 sons that were about to be taken away from her, they're thinking in the same line. The husband is old. When he passes, who will care for the woman? It's a practical question. Good job, Gehazi. In some other stories, you're kind of a rascal, but good job in this one. Call her. I imagine Elisha is just like, oh man, this is going to be great. And so the woman stands in the doorway, the entrance of this brand new room of their home. And Elisha is beaming as he says, about this time next year, you shall embrace a son. To which she says, oh no. Oh no, 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 no. Oh no, my Lord. Now what's going on here? Perhaps he's tapped into dreams that she's given up on. Oh no, I've been down that road. I understand now that's not meant for me. In fact, she says, oh no, my Lord, man of God, very respectfully, do not lie to me. It could also be translated, don't tease me with such fantasies. Whew. If that's not a window into her heart, I don't know what is. Verse 17, but don't you love in your story when you're thinking down this road and God says, but I've got another plan in mind. But the woman conceived and bore a son when the appointed time had come, of which Elisha had told her. You know, one of the tests of a prophet is, does his word come true? Which reminds me, for this woman and for us, we should surely take God at His word. At first, these words seem unbelievable. But Elisha's kind of working in this idea, you know, my God is so big. He is so strong, so mighty. Hey, there is nothing my God can't do for you. And at first, she can't believe it. I have to imagine this notable woman became even more notable the more she waddled around town. Have you seen? Oh, it's so exciting. I heard the other day, it's true. She's going to have a baby. As her pregnancy broadcasts the goodness of God. This promise made by the prophet. Oh, what joy came to their home at the cry of that little boy. Verse 18, just the first 4 words, and the child grew. Boy, how they grow. Just yesterday, my kids were about the ages that were up here singing their little hearts out. Now I got one in college and one in academy. How it happens so fast. And what joy this little boy must have brought to this household. Oh, this is a good story, isn't it? I like it. And it's no fair you know the rest of this story. It's a familiar one, I know. Because in my story today, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I would much prefer a period where sometimes God has a comma. You know what I'm saying? Things are going on great and I'm feeling really good about God and everything. And then something happens. And for us here in North America, the things that happen to us, small potatoes. Almost all of it. I get all riled up and Now it happened one day that this little boy went out to his father who was supervising the reapers, and he said to his father, "My head! Ah! My head!" We were living in Colorado. Our son Christian, about 8 or 9 years old, was outside playing in the snow and ice. On the shady side, the north side of the house, where the snow and ice took a lot longer to melt, not any direct sunlight. And he's out there with a baseball bat and a golf club, and he's just chipping away and batting away, and he was trying to get this big block of ice free, so he could throw it around and break something, or I don't know what. But somehow he slipped on that ice. And you all know this, but there's something about the gravitational pull on a boy's head. That it was the first thing that hit the ground. Oh! And he comes running in, holding the back of his head, and he's crying, and there's some red stuff starting to ooze between his fingers. And of course, Dad, I'm trying to act all tough, and oh, well, what do we have? What's going on here? And I'm like, oh man! Mom's not home, but it's a good thing because she faints at the sight of blood. I call a doctor friend of mine. He's a bone surgeon. I'm thinking maybe he can offer some help. And he asked me, well, are there any brains leaking out? Thanks, Doc. For a moment in time, I am holding my son who is screaming in pain, and he's bleeding from his head. This is not a very pinnacle faith moment. This is kind of a panic moment. This is like, oh no, what should I do kind of moment. And of course we applied pressure and, we wait and see and a little bit of swelling and, oh yeah, that's a pretty good cut there and we'll just keep pressure. Because above the neck and how it works. Finally the blood stops and the crying subsides. And we kind of reason that probably it's going to be okay without stitches and this kind of thing, This little boy is in pain. So his dad says to a servant, carry him to his mama. Smart dad. Yeah. Verse 20, when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon. Period. No, comma. And then died. This little boy, this promised boy, who could very well have just been the center of all this couple's attention for the last 4, 5, 6 years, however old he was. This little boy could indeed have represented the very presence of God and His promises and love toward them. We must be careful, even with our children, to not make them into gods. They are gifts from a loving, caring God. How does that taste, if you can even swallow it, in times like this? Where has God gone? Well, Elisha's nowhere to be seen at this moment. And this notable woman goes into action. I want to just tell the rest of the story as it reads here. But she places the lifeless boy of her son on the bed of the man of God. That's how it reads. That new space in their home would have made a lovely nursery, but it was still the room for the man of God in their home. That priority had not changed. She lays him there and she shuts the door. And she says to her husband, give me your fastest servant and your fastest donkey. And he goes, where are you going? It's not a Sabbath or a festival. Why are you going to Elisha right now? But she doesn't really listen to him. She just asks for the fastest. And it's not a Prius or a Honda, it's a donkey. And she says to the servant, drive forward, and if you're going too fast, I'll let you know. In other words, step on it. And they make the 20-mile journey to see the prophet at Mount Carmel. When her husband asks, why are you going? Her response is, it is well. Well, I don't believe it. Because right now it ain't well. Probably a better translation of the Hebrew, because tense is sometimes intense. It will be well. We'll take it both ways. For she says to her husband, and when Gehazi runs out to greet her at the command of Elisha, they see this cloud of dust on the horizon. Man, somebody's coming fast. Who is it? And that's a Shunammite woman? Gehazi run out to meet her, and when he greets her, she says to him, it is well. I'm having a hard time believing her, but she is saying it is well. Perhaps she's just being polite, don't you think? Her son has passed away. And she's being asked, how you doing? Is everything okay? It's well. Kind of like when you come here to church and somebody smiles and says, Happy Sabbath. And you say, Happy Sabbath. How are you doing? I'm fine. And you're not. Well, I don't know that she's lying. But she says, it is well. Verse 27, now when she came in to the man of God at the hill, at Mount Carmel, which I used to think was an ice cream sundae, some of you kids. Mount Carmel and, but no, it's a real place. She caught him by the feet like Mary in the Garden of Gethsemane caught Jesus' feet. In an act of worship, she caught him by the feet, and Gehazi is trying to push her away, and the man of God is saying, no, she's in deep distress, and I have no idea why. In verse 28, she pours out her heart and says, did I ask for this? Because there's times in our lives when even the blessings God has given us are taken away, and it feels like there's a curse over us. And we must remember that God is not messing with us. Did I not say, do not deceive me? Well, Elisha springs into action. He sends Gehazi with his staff ahead of them. And the mother of the child, this is how insistent she was. Because in sending Gehazi, the immediate assumption was that Elisha was going to stay put. And she says, oh no, you're not. You're coming with us. I will not leave you behind, she says. And they arose, Gehazi going first. 32, when Elisha came into that familiar house. When I call upon God in a crisis, I want even that space to seem familiar to Him. That seems kind of crazy because God knows everything and He is everything. He's beginning and last and all that. Many times I've gone to hospitals and it took me a little while to find the right room to visit the person I was there to see. When Elisha comes into this home, it literally is to him as well, home. You see, calling upon the name of God is not like dialing 911 and you don't really know who's going to show up. It's calling out to a friend who knows you well. He goes into the home. He goes to that familiar room where the boy's lying on his bed, and he shuts the door. Interesting how several times in these stories that the door is shut. And this man of God, end of verse 33, he does what every one of us has the privilege to do. He prays. He prays. Can you imagine the stories that Elisha had heard from his mentor, Elijah, when he prayed? You know, you've probably heard the story, but I want to tell you firsthand. Elijah probably said one day, there we were, all the prophets of Baal. They had been doing their thing all morning and making such a mess and a ruckus, and I quieted them down, and I just simply prayed, and fire came down out of heaven and devoured not just the sacrifice and the wood, but it licked up the water in the trench and burned up the stones. One prayer. That's a lot of pressure. Elisha does what every one of us can do. He prays. We see him doing a similar activity that had also been modeled to him. He put his mouth on the boy's mouth, his eyes on his eyes, his hands on his... He stretched himself out on the child almost like CPR. And he prays. I cannot help but notice verse 35. And he returned and walked back and forth in the house. You know, Elisha, after the fire came down from heaven, I thought, man, God answers prayers just like that. This is amazing. And so I went to a little place where I could look out, and I prayed for rain, says Elijah. And did it happen after the first prayer? You know the story. He sent his servant to look. Nothing. He prays again. He prays again. He has to pray 7 times. And here, as this little boy is lying limp on this bed, we see Elisha pacing back and forth during this process of praying to God. There is nothing about God that demonstrates Himself as a vending machine. That we just put enough quarters in and we'll get what we want every time. Because if we trust Him to be the big God that He is, strong and mighty, capable of anything, then we can also trust Him to do what is His will in our lives. You know the story. Elisha returns to the room, stretches himself out one more time on the boy, and the child sneezes 7 times. Kids, does that sound like a familiar story? Have you heard this story before? Now, I won't ask for any demonstrations, please. But when a young person sneezes, it's an event. I mean, it's spraying everywhere, and you're like, oh, bless you, and oh, there's another one, and oh, man, 7 times. The whole block knew this boy was alive by the 7th sneeze. I love God's sense of humor. For when that little boy was first born, all they waited for was a cry. And then for a time, it seemed like he wouldn't stop crying. But now, God announces to this household that He has brought life back to this boy through 7 sneezes. Not the 7 sneezes of Revelation, that's something else. Okay, it's not. And Gehazi says for the woman to come to the room. And Elijah has the privilege to say to her, pick up your son. He reunites them once again. Just about all of us has lost someone close to us. And we very likely prayed that that individual's life would be prolonged, and it was not. I lost my dad in 1993, a long, long time ago. I miss him all the time. I really do. And I'm now within 5 or 6 years of the age he was when he passed away. And yet, there's this thing called hope. I know. Just as that woman said about Elisha, I know that that is a man of God. I know it. I will join another Old Testament prophet in saying, I know that my Redeemer lives. I know it. And there will come a day that this is just a foretaste, this is just a little appetizer of the capability of God to bring back all those that loved Him. We're going to conclude with a familiar hymn. And behind almost every song, God used events and circumstances to inspire that person to write those words or to even write that tune. And it's a story of a family, a very prosperous family in the Chicagoland area. It wasn't just a few years ago because, you know, the song's in your hymnal because it has to be old, right? And so this is about Horatio Spafford. He was an attorney in Chicago, a Christian, a big supporter of Dwight Moody in his Bible Institute and his evangelistic efforts. And Horatio was a very successful attorney, and he and Anna married, and they began having children, and the first child came along and it was a girl, and the second one came along and it was a girl, and the third one came along and it was a girl, and the fourth one came along and it was a girl, and the fifth one came along and it was a boy. Wow, this is awesome. And as Horatio is continuing his business and he's buying up properties around Chicago, and when that little boy was 4 years old, he passed away of scarlet fever. And it's like everything came to a screeching halt for this family. And yet just a year and a half later was the Great Chicago Fire, which almost destroyed all of their worldly possessions. So Horatio says to Anna, you know, we've got to get away. We've got to take a holiday, not a vacation, a holiday. We've got to take a sabbatical. And Dwight Moody is actually doing meetings over in Europe. Why don't we travel over there and show our support and travel around a bit and just rest? So they travel by train from Chicago to New York, and we're ready to board a boat. Horatio gets a telegram, and he's called back to Chicago for some urgent business. He sends Anna and their 4 daughters ahead on a steamer that was halfway across the Atlantic when it collided with another and sank in less than an hour, claiming the lives of all 4 daughters. Anna sends a telegram that said a little more than what is legendary, but the words "saved alone" have been used in this story. Can you imagine? Horatio, of course, is eager to be with his grieving wife, and he travels back to New York, and he boards the next steamer as they head across the icy Atlantic. The captain calls him to the bridge at one point about halfway and says, we've done some careful calculations, and we believe that we are now passing over where the De Havre went down, and the water is 3 miles deep. Horatio went back to his cabin, and he penned the familiar words that we will sing in just a moment. When peace like a river attends my way. Isn't that nice? When life is good and the sun is shining and it's peaceful. But that's just the first phrase, as you know. When peace like a river attends my way, or when sorrow like sea billows roll. Like I'm drowning in sorrow. The next line, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, what? Like the woman of Shunem responded, it is well. It is well. And you'll notice in your hymnal, it does not say, it is well with my wallet. It does not say, it's well with my retirement plan. It says, it is well with my soul. Because there are very few things, when it all boils down to it, there are very few things that are eternal enough to matter. It is well with my soul because of Jesus. We'll sing the other 2 verses as well, verses 1, 2, and 3, because we got to sing them all. But there's another verse I want to read to you before we sing, written by Horatio Spafford. It's included in some hymnals, but not all. But Lord, 'tis for Thee, for Thy coming we wait. The sky, not the grave, is our goal. Oh, if these aren't Adventist words, I don't know what. O trump of the angel, O voice of the Lord, blessed hope, blessed rest for my soul. It's a verse that far transcends our current existence, looking forward to the soon coming of Jesus, when it will be well. I hope that your soul is encouraged today, that in the story that is being lived out by Christ in you, the experience of this life, don't so discourage you that you forget how big your God is, how strong and mighty He is. And that there is nothing our God can't do for you. So let's all sing and say in our hearts, it is well.
Please stand as we sing on you.
sin. Oh, the joy of this glorious thought. My sin, not in part, but the whole, is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. And Lord, hasten the day when my face shall be sight. The clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The drums shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Shall we pray? Oh, wonderful Lord, you have provided for us everything. Even when there's just a little oil left in the bottom of a jar, even when death surrounds us, you have already conquered it all. And so, Lord, as we place our faith in you, even though it's small, you have a way of growing our faith in you each day through life's experiences. Oh, Lord, may we greet every joy and every challenge with this simple little phrase, it is well with my soul. Oh, it's not that we're in denial of the tough things going on around us. But Lord, teach us to not trust in those things, but to trust in you, our wonderful Maker, our amazing Redeemer, and our soon coming Savior. Amen. As we have just sung, oh, how the clouds are going to be parted as a scroll as Jesus descends to this earth to gather us, to take us home, where there will be no more sighing, no more crying, no more death, no more pain. So Lord, teach us each day to keep you close, to make room for you in our lives, to trust you, to follow you. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of the Weekly Worship Hour. If you would like to learn about the opportunities available through Forest Park Seventh-day Adventist Church, such as outreach, service, and Forest Park Adventist Christian School, visit this website. If you are in our area, we would be delighted to have you worship with us at this address.